The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make a lot of noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, just please take your seat about it. We're with you. It's time for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost to ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. It's good to have you along for the ride on this Friday, May 5th, Saturday, May 6th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you had a great day and night as we are live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North, live 7 days a week. We welcome in our terrestrial radio stations, WQEE 99, Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station funded by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Then rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. Hey, if you're a social media junkie like I am, do me a favor. Follow us on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. And, of course, our website is SpacedOutRadio.com. If you head over to Patreon.com right now, for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR. Now, if you want to take part in this show, because we don't take phone calls, we need you to sign into one of our chat rooms and join the plethora of people who are following us right now. Click on Listen Live when you go to our website. That takes you to our chat room. On Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or maybe you're one of the lucky ones, like Gail, like Claudia, like Bill, like Joe, like Bob, and you're part of the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I'll get to your questions and comments in there as well. That's filling up. I already see Les and Canadian Joe in there as well. Hey, we have a brand new news section on our website called The Encounter Online, discussing everything paranormal from our editors Eric Markham, Everett Thiemer, and their team of writers. You can check out my latest blog there as well. On our site, you can also join the SOR Space Travelers Club for as low as $5 a month. And if you've had a sighting you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to find out what's going on with you. It's the first Friday of the month, so it's Cinco de Mayo here on the West Coast. And in the old Dave Scott family, I want to wish my lovely mom a 74th birthday, a very happy one. Love you, Mom. I know you're not listening because you're not into the aliens, but that's okay. I love you with all my heart, and I hope you had the best day ever. So, since it's Mom's birthday, I figured we'd get into some alien chatter, knowing that she's not listening and doesn't like her son talking about it. But our Keith Andrews is back, and his monthly visit to our studio for the E.T. Connection. Keith is a lifelong E.T. contact whose stories sound stranger than fiction. It's a life he wouldn't wish upon anyone, but it's his, and he's had to live with it for 51 years so far in the strange and obtuse. It's not normal to have this much E.T. contact with those from a faraway land and maybe a galaxy. From reptilians to greys and every strange creature in between, Keith has become a calming voice around these parts for those seeking answers to their own experiences. Please remember, this show is an interactive show with you, the audience. So make sure all of your questions are typed in capitals. I don't want to miss them. Keith doesn't want to miss them. So here we go. Our Keith Andrews. Hard to believe. It's May 5th, and you're back on the show. Just seems like yesterday, my friend. How are you?
Not bad at all. 2 days ago, I'd have given you a different answer, but today we're still breathing, so what the heck?
Well, as long as you're on the good side of the ground, that's a good thing. Or if you're up in space sometimes, making a trip, you know, that's not a bad thing.
I'll tell you, you get a much better view from up there.
I wouldn't know. But I can tell you this. Next week, I will know a little bit because I will be catching a jet airplane from Vancouver, flying all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, meeting up with Eric Markham from my team. He's going to pick me up at the airport. We're going to drive to Provincetown, Mass., where I'm going to be speaking about paranormal media at the Provincetown Paracon on the 12th. And if you're on the East Coast and you want to attend, my speech will start at noon. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. And I know you've done Paracons before, Keith, and you're going to be wandering around ours later this fall. Do you still have fun going to these Paracons?
quite honestly, I do. You meet a lot of interesting people, and some of the conversations, the presentations are always fascinating, especially if you haven't seen them before. But the conversations you get into outside of the meeting, outside of the presentations, tends to be even more intriguing. And sometimes those can get really long into the night. So brace yourself for that one. Don't expect to get a lot of sleep there, Dave.
No. And usually when I travel, that's what the airplane ride is for. I've been warming up in Las Vegas quite a bit. So that always makes it a little bit interesting, because who sleeps in Vegas? You can't. So I just enjoy it. I'm going to go for the fun. I'm going to meet some members of my team who I talk to literally every night, and never met them, but they're going to be there. Everett Themer, Eric Markham. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, the one thing that I was looking through the lineup last night for this Paracon, Provincetown Paracon, and I kind of did a uh-oh. Because, Keith, you and I have talked off the air quite a bit. I'm not a big paranormal guy. And mostly they're all ghost hunters going to be there. And I'm a little, I don't want to say agitated by that, because I'm not. I'm very excited to go. But I'll tell you, man, it's a little eerie when you think that you're going to be discussing something totally different than everybody else. And some of the people who speak there are not going to be on par with you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And the whole trick from that end is realizing that they do have their view, and some of it can be rather fascinating. But if you can skew it sideways when they start talking about ghosts, understand that the off-worlders have ghosts and their own issues as well, that are very similar to what humans go through. And there's more of a crossover between it than people actually realize.
I'm not nervous about it. I'm not nervous about the speech. Talking to people, whether there's a crowd or whether there's a computer screen in front of me, that's the easy part. That for me is the easy part. But, the one thing I'm probably most nervously excited for is that there's going to be a whole lot of new people learning about what we do. And they're going to tune in. And they're going to check things out. We're going to have some T-shirts there. We're going to have posters. We're going to have stickers. We're going to have a lot of things going on. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And, this type of networking for what we do, this is what we have to do. And you've had to do it yourself. You've gone a few times now out to Portland, Maine for the Experiencers Conference. And you know as well as I do, sometimes you got to make that long road trip in order to help get the name and the idea out there.
Oh, yeah. And, the funny thing about it, when you look at the travel side of it, is quite often you'll get more of a response on the road than you will face-to-face. Than you will in your own area. But the one question I'm sure that the listeners are curious of this one, but while you're out there, are you going to still manage to do your show while you're out at the Paracon?
No, I actually have James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend, who is going to be hosting Wednesday through Friday and then Monday the 15th again. So he is going to be in the hot seat in the cabin. I'll have to make sure that I've got it all cleaned up here for him. So when he comes in, he doesn't find my bubble gum stuck underneath the desk. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. I just figured I'd ask because somebody's going to be wondering.
Well, you know what? That's actually a good point. And the show must go on. We are not taking nights off for this show. There will be broadcasts going straight through the week. James will be with you May 10th through the 15th. That'll be his longest streak on this show since we started, so I'm sure he will do just fine with that. And, you know, he's a good pro. He gets what we are doing here. He knows who the guests are, who are coming up, so it's going to be a lot of fun with him, and it's going to be, you know, a good experience all around. So I literally plan on just taking some time to enjoy what's going on, and I will try to call in. Corey was just asking, maybe you could do a live call-in with James. I am going to try. I'm going to try. We'll see how it goes. We don't really like to break format when we're on the show, so it might be on the weekend, and we'll just continue on with that. But enough about what's happening next week with me, Keith, because I'm getting pretty excited. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting pretty excited. What was that, my friend?
I said, gee, I couldn't tell.
No, I know. I know. You know, but we got a show to do tonight. You come on the first Friday of the month in a segment we call the ET Connection. And every time you come on, we have new listeners, so we have to reintroduce you. You're a man, Keith, who has had extraterrestrial contact pretty much your entire life. And as I say in my intro, you know, this is a life where, and you and I, going back to our private conversations, where you have told me point blank, you wouldn't wish this on anybody. What you've had to go through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just the complete unknown strangeness of it all. What's it like living a life filled with extraterrestrial contact?
Well, quite frankly, it gets to be not only disconnected, but in a lot of ways, it gets to be very lonely. Because even the people that get close to you cannot, in truth, really relate to what you're going through. You know, when you're looking at the world, and people have told me all along, like, I have trouble with your standard computer. And yet, I can understand the quantum magnetic flux without any problem at all, and end up confusing quantum physicists when I try and explain how it works. You know, it doesn't add up, because it doesn't add up for other people, because they stand there looking at you going, how can you have trouble with modern science, you know, with modern technology, and yet the rest of this stuff makes total sense? You know, even to the point of, like, when I was 10 years old, well, a little older than 10, but when I was just a kid, I was telling the doctors then that they would never understand human healing until they looked at the triple helix. Well, the doctor, which, for those that don't know what I'm referring to, the double helix is what human doctors have always said is the backbone of DNA. Well, they told me I was nuts until about late 98, early 99, when the major research centers finally discovered it. Well, this is almost 25 years after I told them about it. And the doctors are still having trouble understanding how I can see that sort of thing. When you're trying to, when you look at modern science or at the modern world, and people are talking about advanced technology as in the microwave. And I'm looking at them going, yes, I understand what you're talking about, but that's actually not as effective as what you think. And I can explain why, but for me, I've seen the workings of these things, and I've got enough corroboration from both scientists and individuals that the information I'm sitting on is accurate. But as a kid especially, how do you get a 14-year-old, like when I was 14, to understand that what mankind is doing is not as advanced as they'd like to think, but man is doing an incredible job on this planet. They're making their mistakes, don't get me wrong, but then the off-worlders have made more than their fair share. You know, one of the biggest challenges for me is something called a protein crash, which astronauts get regularly, Unfortunately, in a sense, so do I. And that is something that happens when you're off world for a period of time and then come back down. And for those of you that do their written research, if you will, look it up. Robert White in SOR on Facebook there has got a picture of the triple helix up. And what I didn't know when I was first talking to them, when I was first talking to the doctors, they didn't have the technology to see this. So it puts you in a very disconnected sense. And of course, even when people have gotten close to me and we start discussing past lives and what have you, I remember my whole 9 yards, the greater number of past lives. I've got holes in them, but let's face it, my memories go back to before the construction of the planet. So, I think the best way it was put was actually on Star Trek, the Star Trek #3, the movie, The Search for Spock. When Bones was talking to Spock after Spock had been brought back from the dead, and he goes, can we discuss this? You've been where nobody's been, which is sort of the same. And Spock looks at him and goes, he says, no, we can't, because we don't have a working, a working reference point, right? And of course, Bones looked at him and goes, well, what, you mean I have to die in order to discuss it? In order to have a good conversation? Spock looks at him and goes, well, yes. And this is why when people talk about, the one that frustrates me the most is people that go, I really want to have an experience, an encounter. I don't care with who, I don't care what it is. I just want to have an experience. And to me, this has got to be the most suicidal perspective possible, because not all the people out there are nice. It's like not all humans are nice. The greater majority of them are, of the off-worlders, are decent individuals. They've got their own perspectives, but it's a very different world for me because I do see the other side of it. Of course, it's got the advantage of I don't have any prejudice towards any individual type of human, no matter what your gender, your income, your profession. Doesn't make any difference to me. I treat everybody pretty much the same way, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. What do you figure about that?
Well, it does make sense. It does make a lot of sense because in the end, we are here. We are trying to make sense of what life is all about, whether or not you're atheist, agnostic, scientific, or religious. It's one of the things that we all find is a mystery as to why we are here on this planet. But when we look up to the stars, we always try to figure out what is up there. What's going on beyond what we can see with our, very primitive eyes. Wow, that was poetic there for a second. But the whole point... the whole point that I'm getting at is when it comes to having that type of contact your entire life, Keith, at some point did you ever say to yourself, why me? Why is this the path that I was chosen to be on?
At some point? How about daily? The reality is I question it all the time because I'm stuck in a situation where if I could draw what I can see, or if I had the cash flow that I require to build what is necessary, and what I've been shown, I'd be in a heck of a sight better shape. But I keep questioning, why do you keep showing me this stuff? Why do you keep telling me what the human race is up to and which direction they're going if you're not going to give me a way of dealing with it, of helping to shift it out of its current situation? Because some of the images I've been shown, and they're absolute disasters, but invariably I get shown how to cope with them before they happen. unfortunately, the people that are in power don't want to talk. They, for whatever reason, they've got this brilliant idea that we don't want to talk to anybody that may have the answer. We want to come up with the answer ourselves. At least that's how it seems.
First question coming in from Christopher, one of our new listeners in the Spreaker chat room, and he is asking, Keith, you brought it up, so could you please tell us if there are any off-worlder serial killers?
The answer would be yes. And rest assured, they come from every walk of life. The biggest thing that you got to realize is just because they're off-worlders, got bigger toys, there are still off-worlders that are, shall we say, a little deviant from the norm or a little bit more pronounced. Understand, when humans talk about a mass murderer, humans are talking about people that are, that kill, 8-10 people. It's a mass murder. Okay. They're absolutely horrified when and justifiably, when people kill 30 or 40. When we're talking mass murderers of the off-worlders, okay, take a Tormenon. You want to, you take one of them and that's another one of the reptilian races that I've dealt with. But when they talk in terms of mass murder, they're talking in terms of wiping out cities and or planets. They're not talking about individuals.
Mm-hmm.
The scale is just, it's absolutely mind-blowing for most people. But there are mass murderers, even with the nice little grays that everybody looks at and goes, oh, he's a scientist, they're kind of an odd-looking animal. How could that be, how could that be a mass murderer? They come in all walks.
Mm-hmm. Next question coming up comes from Love Energy, and he is asking, Keith, to your knowledge, are off-worlders forced to pay to live as we here on Earth?
That depends on the race, but on the whole, the ones that are out and about, and it's a very good question, the ones that are out and about have a built-in survival system, if you will. The ones that are interstellar travel, they're, for the most part, their living expenses are built in. Okay, in other words, they don't have the monetary situation that we've got here on Earth. They've got a unified system, and in almost every case, especially with the spacefaring side of their civilizations, it is done from a standpoint of electronic, of digital cash, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's a lot of different names they use. They do have barter systems on their own planets, right? But, and I forget the type of government that it's called, but for the most part, the government takes care of standard living expenses, such as housing, food, that sort of thing. It's all built into the system. And yes, the answer to the flip side of that, there are, almost in most races, there are the poor. There are some that they don't have, like, for instance, Rosasians, which are your 7.5 to 8.5 foot reptiles. They don't have handicapped people. They don't have anybody that is around that is crippled. Not a one of them. Because they're terminated. Now, that may seem harsh, but it does mean that they don't have anybody that can't pull their weight.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to a question from Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio by Canadian Joe. He is asking, previous to your other comment about the mass murderers in the extraterrestrial realm, if E.T. is so much more advanced, wouldn't they have evolved beyond being mass murderers?
I wish. The sad reality of it is that, yes, they are technologically advanced. However, spiritually, they are not necessarily much further ahead than what man is, aside from, well, from a social standpoint, most of them have it down to a one world government or a one civilization government where, and don't get me wrong, they've got representatives and that sort of thing that bring the concerns to the councils or to the government, standing, if you will. But the fact is, because there is still good and evil in every race, they still have the option of choosing to go against the system, figuring they know better, creating a problem.
Moving on to our next question, Christopher is asking, what type of penitentiary systems do off-worlders have, and is there capital punishment or some sort of colonies for prisoners?
Well, it depends on that's one of those questions that has so many answers to it. For instance, look at the Srazazians. They don't have they don't have penal colonies. They don't have penitentiaries, because if you are a problem child, you're terminated. It's just that simple. So they don't have a reason for it. If you take a look at Tormenons, they do have penal colonies. Now, that's a group, that's a race built their entire culture on he who has the most money gets the best deal. Okay, the might is right, taken to a slightly different perspective. It's not all about strength of muscle. It can be strength of social positioning. You look at the Mobians, and they have actual penal colony, like they do actually have prisons for temporary, for what they call, when we talk about the Mobians' re-education system, we are not talking about brainwashing. Technically. We're talking about putting them back in a classroom, re-educating them on the social reasons of why things are done the way they're done, in order to, in order to put them back on track.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel then that it's more of a swift and just society? Because the way you describe it, it almost sounds very communistic.
Well, pardon my being obtuse, but I'll have to take your word for that one. I presume that, don't get me wrong, my biggest problem there is I really haven't studied the social side of which government does what. But they are definitely, with many of the races, they don't have this idea of a drawn out court system. Like, yes, for those of you that worry about the innocent getting caught in the crossfire, it does happen. People do get caught in the crossfire. But you take a look at the Galactic Consortium. You get charged with something. Now, the Galactic Consortium, for those of you that are just joining us, that is the governing body that handles sector-wide, the sector-wide interaction of the off-worlders and the ancient races, for that matter, with Earth. And when there is a crossover, when there is a problem, and somebody is charged with whatever, if they're found guilty, they do have the right to appeal the charge. However, they only have one solar month, and that's according to their clock. Let's not go around which planet we're talking about. But they have 1 month to put the appeal together, and if it fails, then punishment is meted out. More often than not, it means either they are, in the case of the consortium, returned to their home planet and told they can't travel more, if it's a minor problem. If it's a major problem, well, they airlock them.
Let's get to a couple questions from Gail here. Gail is asking, Keith, what is preventing you from writing and sharing the information you have received with the public? Even a blog would be helpful.
That would be going back to two factors. One, I spent the first 50 years of my life with my family trying to tell me I was nuts, so I spent so much time trying to basically do the wrong thing, if you will, and deal with that side. The other problem is me and modern technology have not gotten along very well, and every time I've brought somebody else in to deal with the technological side of it, they've set it up so it could be done, and to a point where I didn't understand that technology was working, and then they bailed. So it has been one setback after the other. Where it comes to getting pictures of what I've seen done, well, I went to the Center for Arts and Technology in Kelowna here, in my home, well, not my hometown, but the one I'm living in, and I talked to them. Now, the administration was really good, took the information and sent it out. I didn't get one response from any artist in that entire in the entire school. Not one replied. So finding an artist to do the drawing, because frankly I'm just not that good at drawing, has proven to be a monumental problem. But those are the I'm point where I'm getting sorted around. I've got a lot of hard copy done, like on paper. Of course, that doesn't do much good. And, of course, the problem with publishing a book is that funny little thing that I'm sure many people can relate to, lack of finances to do it. I actually had Hollywood actually approached me with a contract to tell my life story. And when I looked at the contract, and the gist of it was they wanted to be able to fictionalize it, make up their own lies, break the contract, and leave me with nothing to do, like no recourse. So I politely told them what they could do with the contract. You know, so these are just some of the obstacles I've run into.
Let's get to another question from Gail here, and Gail is asking, so far the reptilians have terminated the infirm or disabled and the troublesome. Who makes the decision someone will die? Please describe their judicial system.
Well, it becomes, like, some of it is pretty black and white. You know, if somebody is born where the medical profession says this person will not be able to be self-supporting when all is said and done, and bear in mind, with the Shazasians, they are born capable, they are born knowing they need to help. If a hatchling cannot walk, okay, they're terminated. Okay, if they are born with a deformed arm, they're terminated. You know, it's this sort of medical anomaly. If one of them is born and instead of trying to help other hatchlings out of the egg, and they start trying to eat them, you know, start trying to kill the new hatchlings, they are terminated because there's something wrong. They're not going to be a benefit to society. As they get older, if they get hurt, you know, the medical side is pretty easy. The medical profession says, yes, we can put them back together, or no, we can't. And if it's a no, they're put out of their misery right then. Nobody takes offense to it. They don't look at it like the Shazasians themselves don't see it as a bad thing. It's sort of a case of they're not going to be able to survive on their own, therefore remove the problem. When it comes to the ones that go sour somewhere along the way, if we are talking about somebody in a political system, like, for instance, a politician, and they've risen in the political system, and they are doing a poor job, anybody can ask them to step down. And when I mean anybody, a child can complain about it and ask for them to step down. There is a process where they're asked to explain what they're doing, why it's being done the way it is. If the majority of the people present say, no, you have to step down, the politician does not take on the whole. It's not seen as you're a bad person. It's, you're not able to do that job, so step away, let somebody else. If the politician, for instance, steps out of the job, okay, and goes back to whatever he was doing, and this applies also to if somebody gets promoted in a company to a higher position, is proven they can't do it, they step back. If they voluntarily step back, no harm done. If they refuse to step back, 9 times out of 10, the mob tears them apart. It's a very brutal justice system by human standards. It's a very brutal control system, if you will, but it's the way they do it. And of course, when you have the issue of murder, well, the reality is, if it's a black and white, that person is a murderer, then the justice system is set up that they're terminated before they leave the courtroom. It's just that quick. There is no, if it's a black and white, it's a done deal. If it's not black and white, then they do look at the circumstantial evidence, and that's where that one issue of appeal comes in. But, the thing is, they don't have one judge. They've actually got 12 judges that sit in a council where it comes to a criminal issue in their culture. Okay. And that way it's a panel of people, not the jury, but the actual judges. There's a panel of them that sort it out.
Well, let's move on here to the next question. This one comes from Chris in the Spreaker chat room. Would the off-worlders get angry if you divulged facts that they don't want people to know?
I don't know. I've had some people complain a whole lot about it, but have I ever been punished for saying something? No. But then my answer to them, they ask why I told somebody. Well, my first answer is, well, because I was asked. And the second part of it is, if you didn't want me to know it, you probably shouldn't have told me. Because it's, even with humans that know me, I'm not subtle. If somebody asks me a question, I will give as close to an answer as I can get for most things. There are certain things I just plain won't tell people. Because I don't believe in, karmically, it's an absolute disaster to do what is called psychic eavesdropping, meaning looking into somebody's life just to tell other people what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on here. Let's get to Robert's question. He is asking, for the alien races you were just discussing, for proof of innocence, do any of the races have video, audio recording devices implanted for their own protection?
I'm presuming he's referring to implanted as in chipping people.
Sure.
And giving that as a parameter for the implanted video situation, quite frankly, there's only one race I know of, and they happen to be cyborg. So, but the flesh and blood, especially the ones that I was just specifying, the Strazazians, putting a metal chip in somebody is a flaw. Now, they do happen to have better scanners and what have you to check the evidence around crime scenes or around complications. And they do have a much better system for picking up subharmonics when you're dealing with talking to somebody to determine whether they're lying or not.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with the Srazaz, they don't do this metal chipping thing.
Are you saying then they have race memory from previous? Maybe they have erased memories from previous generations' DNA?
Absolutely. DNA, even humans have cellular memory that dates back over generations. Okay, this is one of the reasons why this planet is so valuable, is because mankind has figured out in a much higher percentage how to tap into past memories, even though many of the people doing it don't realize that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting indeed. Interesting indeed. How much of this revolves around what they do with humans? Does it revolve around anything? Do they treat us the exact same way?
Well, again, now we're getting back into this issue of it depends on the race. Especially, and we'll look at the Greys, who are your primary collectors. They're your primary scientists across the globe. People aren't going to like this, but basically, humans are treated very much like a lesser life form, in as much as collect them, take blood samples, take fluid samples, take skin samples, tag them and send them back home, and watch their migration. You know, very much like mankind does to so many races. But also like mankind, they will go out of their way to try and humans avoid decimating their culture. Mankind just happens to be more intent on decimating it than the elephant is.
Well, that's the way we like to do things. We're good at that. We're good at that. You know, that's being honest. When it comes to human-alien contact or relationships, whatever you want to call, a lot of people have a tough understanding, Keith, why, if they've been abducting people or contacting people for literally tens of thousands of years, why do they continue doing it? And I got to admit, I have that same question as well. Because at that point, I realize man has evolved, okay? Man has evolved in its thinking, his physicality, absolutely everything. Yet, they keep taking us. And not just a few, but probably a few million people. What is the purpose, in your opinion, of continually taking people when, even though we may have changed, the DNA and the structure of what mankind is really hasn't?
The structure, no, but as man has evolved, there are new pathways that are reopening, and it's that side of it that that is still holding their attention. I mean, you know, ultimately, when we take a look at the science of abduction, and that's what it is, on the whole, when you look at the science of abduction, what they're doing is they are watching the evolution of a race. Now, to many humans, the length of time they've taken is akin to watching a blade of grass grow. You know, sitting there and watching on a microscopic level a lawn evolve. But that's what these people are doing, is they are watching, they are learning about not only the evolution of the human race, but because humans procreate so fast, they are able to extrapolate by human evolution how other races evolve over time. What it takes to, you know, what extenuating circumstances are required for a race to jumpstart itself. Okay, we all know that mankind pulls together in the face of a massive disaster. You know, even in the middle of the worst war, you throw a natural disaster in, or you give mankind a common enemy, and all of a sudden forgets whose race, what color each of them are, what belief structure or who they're trying to bed, and all of a sudden everybody starts pulling together to try and keep everybody alive. It's this kind of internal conflict that the off-worlders are studying and going, if these guys, as mankind evolves and gets it together, mankind is going to be a force to contend with. But right now, that's like looking at a 2-year-old and going, he is going to be one heck of a hockey player when he gets older, or he's going to be a world-renowned scientist, when he gets into his 60s. The human race is an extremely young race, but it does give a beautiful research foundation for seeing how societies evolve.
Do you feel then that there is any sort of understanding that extraterrestrials can give people as to why they are doing this? Because in the end, it does seem a little wrong at how they're handling it.
Well, best not get into the right and wrong of it, especially with what you and I were talking earlier. But the reality of it is, their method is certainly not going to appeal to humans by any stretch of the imagination, at least no functional stretch of it. But the off-worlders have often told people, sent them back with a message, this is what you're doing wrong, straighten it out. But mankind hasn't chosen to follow what they've been told, where they've been guided. And that's where it buckles up on itself.
Do you think there will come a time when we're going to understand why this is happening? Or, for some families, why it's happening generation after generation?
Well, the answer to that is yes. Now, I can explain the issue myself as to why it happens generation after generation. It's because of evolution. They're tracking what the DNA passed on a very minute level, on a tiny level, as in the subatomics and the quantum magnetoelectrics. They're looking at the changes that happen when cells become another generation. Okay, now, for humans, because humans are, from a technological standpoint, essentially blind to a lot of what's happening, that may not seem all that exciting. To the races that are doing it, that are advanced enough to be able to do it, it's extremely exciting.
Mm-hmm. Exciting how?
Well, think of it this way. If for anybody out there listening, if you know a scientist that is truly into the discovery side of things, when they discover a new animal or a new plant that hasn't been discovered before, there is a shockwave of excitement that runs through the human scientific community. About all of the ramifications, especially when they find a link between two apparently completely divergent races. Or the same thing happens with the off-worlders. When they see they'll take a look at a human tree, at a family generation after generation, real peace-loving, and all of a sudden they've got this one individual in that tree, and only one, that goes divergent and goes on a murder spree. Okay, that anomaly is what gets their attention. That's the thing they're looking for. That's the unknown that keeps them getting, if you will, out of bed in the morning to do what they do. Okay, that's where the excitement comes from.
If you are someone who thinks they are being contacted but aren't sure, what are some of the signs or advice you would give people to find out whether or not they've been taken?
Well, one of the first things you look at is the way it was put to me. You may have trouble with physical evidence, so look at your circumstantial. If you're constantly losing track of time, and especially if you've got friends that are telling you that you're missing time, but when you're missing time, and I'm not talking about you lost track of a minute or two. I'm talking when you're losing 20 minutes, when the clock all of a sudden looks odd, or when you've lost a few hours, it's a pretty good indication that there's something amiss. The people that are one of the first questions I ask people is when they step out, if they for the people that tell me they feel they're being watched all the time. And the first question I ask is, when you're walking along and you feel like you're being watched, what altitude do you look at? What level do you look at? Instinctively, when you're looking to see who's following you, where do you look? And if you think about it, most people, and when I mean most, you're looking at 90-95% of them, from what I've found, look over their shoulder. They look behind them at roughly eye level. But you'll get the occasional few, myself included, that...
On that note, we're going to stop right there for a break. I lost track of time, my friend. I'm right into this tonight. That's what we do. And you know what? We're not even invited to KJ's party down in Florida that she has every first Friday of the month, our Keith Andrews night. We're going to be more with Keith coming up here in hour number 2 right after this.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
The third Monday of every month, Spaced Out Radio is going to bring you a different look at everything paranormal. Welcome to The Reporters. Jim Mallard, Vanessa Hogel, Denise Garcia, and Christina George join me, Dave Scott, for a look at the weird and strange from the other side of the microphone. We'll break down ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, and the people investigating them. The paranormal media has never been heard like this. Come listen to The Reporters.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us, so sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program and on Sunday, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin are back in the cabin for Spaced Out Weekend, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, as they take over Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North. You can find it all live at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Thank you so much for being with us as well. We're live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio on KTLK, The Fringe FM. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Brefophagist. I think it's brefophagist. We're going to go with that one. Brefophagist is your password for tonight. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill has come up strong off the injured reserve to bring you the password of the night. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show, like Rahonda, Wisteria, Les, where's it, Lester, Canadian Joe, John, they're all there hanging out. You join us as well. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Stitcher, and Player FM. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can head on over to patreon.com as well. For as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radios. The first Friday of the month means it's R. Keith Andrews night on Spaced Out Radio. The ET Connection happens the first Friday of every month. Keith, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me, and welcome back to all the listeners as well, and to any of the new ones that have popped in during commercial break here.
Absolutely, and you know what? It's usually at this time of the night we give our friend KJ and her husband Bob a hard time down in Florida for once again having an R. Keith Andrews party on Spaced Out Radio, blaring the speakers across the lakes, bouncing off the alligators that are in that lake to broadcast to their entire neighborhood. And once again, no invite for you and I. None.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, I'm pretty certain we're going to at least be able to get a coffee out of them if they do make it up. Well, if I make it up there and they make it up to the Paragon in the fall here.
Well, they are. But it won't be an R. Keith Andrews night. It'll be an R. Keith Andrews weekend. That's for sure.
Yeah, I much appreciate the thought. I'm pretty certain there's going to be more people there than me.
I know. But it's still going to be a lot of fun nonetheless. And thank you so much for not inviting us to the party, KJ and Bob. Once in a while, we'd like to have a drink on your patio, talk to the alligators about aliens, because alligators like aliens too. At least that's what we like to think. Keith, it's always so much fun when you're on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. I mean, the alligators like aliens. I mean, they're just a different flavor of chicken.
Exactly. What, the alligators are a different flavor, or the aliens are a different flavor?
Well, actually, both.
Well, I'm not going to try alien. I'll tell you that right now. Not going to try alien. Keith, we were talking right before the break about people having experiences and how they figure out whether or not they've had experiences. Do you know of any tests a person can do on themselves to figure out whether or not they have been taken?
That they can do on themselves? Not conclusively, because the problem with doing a test, you can look at circumstantial evidence, but you won't be able to, in all likelihood, get quantitative proof. You can look, if you've happened to have taken a picture of, for instance, the back of your neck, right behind the ear that night, and there's nothing there, and the following morning you find that there's, these neat little marks on you that, that weren't there the night before, then you'd have quantifiable proof. But the odds of actually being able to prove it to yourself, you're looking at mounting really a bunch of circumstantial evidence to, if you will, convince yourself that you're not nuts. Because missing time, you don't get quantitative proof of very often. I've lucked out, like early on I lucked out, by being able to notice things that didn't add up. like watching a clock change by 20 minutes. Like watching it literally shift 20 minutes.
For sure. But people still want to know.
Okay. Now, in my case, I've lost hours. But well, yes. And unfortunately, when you're talking about a only thing you can do that I'm aware of, and for pity's sakes, if somebody's got an idea beyond this, keep a journal. Keep marking down things, and you'll notice a change in perspective, or there'll be chunks of time that go disappearing, sometimes at regular intervals, that all of a sudden you never see this time of the week, if you will, right? Or if you're noticing different, if you wake up with marks or with bruises or patterns on your body that don't add up, document them, because you're trying to amass enough information that it outweighs everything else. The way it was put to me when I was talking to somebody about it one day was, you're dealing with circumstantial evidence. So if you think you've been taken, or that you may have been taken, go with the idea that you may have been, that it is quite possible, but keep looking for something that explains all of the things you're experiencing and derails the idea of being taken. That's unfortunately about the only thing you really can do if you're looking for personal testing. Because there aren't many doctors that are going to test and just on a whim, if you will, scan for implants.
A lot of people also have implants that move. There are some people who have them stationary, others who have them move. A lot of people may think maybe they got a bone chip or something along those lines that's floating around their body. What do you do, or how can a person tell whether or not they've been implanted?
Well, again, that becomes a bit of a problem. The only way you can do that, realistically, is if you feel you've been implanted, and this only generally applies, can be verified, if you will, if it's a solid implant, where if you feel a bulge under your skin, for instance, go to the doctor and get them to x-ray it, or get them to check it out. Okay, that's about the only way you're going to get proof, because the alternative, well, we're just not going to give anybody the idea to. There are other ways of doing that. But go to a doctor if you feel a bump under your skin that doesn't add up. Go and talk to a doctor and get them to check it out. Because they've got the equipment, they've got the training to know whether that bump is a real one that you just overlooked, or whether it's something else. Granted, if it's an actual implant that they pull out, the odds are they're not going to give it back to you.
That is true. And are you going to get an actual answer that you need to whether or not you've been implanted?
9 times out of 10, no. This is where the proof becomes because the governments of the world have got such a stranglehold on the evidence that is out there that it's extremely difficult to get any of it proven.
I can understand that. And I can see where they wouldn't give it back or something along those lines if they took it out. But what about these implants that move around? Implants that people say, kind of scooch away from the doctors trying to take them out or trying to figure out what they were. We've heard those reports numerous times.
Yep. And good luck getting those ones removed. They are literally bioengineered to avoid external biomagnetoelectrics. In other words, when you get close to them, they will run. It's kind of like a clam. If you've ever been clam digging, the water hole at the top once, and you're okay. But if you go after it on head on, it'll run, and you ain't going to catch it. Anybody that has ever clam dug knows exactly what I'm referring to there. But the bioengineered implants, you're not going to get removed, and they get so tied into the cell structure that the doctors on the whole can't find them. You're trying to find a bug, if you will, as in a tracking bug that is built with your own DNA. Makes it real hard for humans to actually find the thing.
Which extraterrestrial species are implanting? Are they all? Do they all use different sorts of implantation? Are there some species who use the ones that move? And if so, which ones are those?
Well, there are definitely ones that do it. There are definitely more than one race that do the tracking. The Greys are the ones that usually use the technological plant, the technological bug. Okay. And quite frankly, because of two factors. One is because it's a lot more compatible because you can mass produce the bug, right? Which means it doesn't matter who you pick up, you can pop it into anybody. And there's no problem with it because they've tailored it to the human genome so they don't have to worry about rejection. But it's a broadband bug. The secondary reason is because humans, bear in mind, the Greys are studying human evolution. And by making a technological bug, a technological tracking device, some humans will find it and will remove it. And the Greys actually are counting on this for two factors. One, it shows that humans are learning. Two, and this is the funny part, at least in my eyes, humans take the bug that they have had that has been used to track a given human subject. The human scientist, takes that bug out, and now we're not going to give it back to the human that had it. We're going to take it off to our research lab. What humans have overlooked is that bug that they to their research lab is designed to relay information from the research lab. It had nothing to speak of with the person they put it in. Okay, it's a way of bugging the researchers without actually bugging the researchers. If that makes any sense.
But do different races put in different implants? Or is it just the Greys, who are the worker bees of them all, doing it and just using different types?
Oh, no. Like, for instance, if you take Radiocon, for instance, which is a faction, they will absolutely use implants. Okay, the Greys are the most common. When you take a look at when you look at the Tormenon will track people because the Tormenon are mercenaries. And what that boils down to is if they spot somebody that they figure could be beneficial down the road, they'll bug them. They'll tag them so that they can follow them. Because they figure they'll lead them to something that will make them money. Or someone that they can utilize later. You take a look at like the ones that don't do it, like there aren't that many that actually use them. You will find the Mobians don't touch them at all. Like they just don't bug people. The Mobians will walk amongst humans to watch what's going on. If you take a look at the Techlex don't bother bugging people. Okay, there's not much point. Nords will track people. And again, it has to do with, in their case, watching the evolution. Okay. But Nords have a much more direct interaction at the same time. It's not like when we take a look at the Nords, we're very interested in how mankind is evolving from a social standing, and what you'll find with theirs is they're not just tracking the person that they put it in, but it's set up to actually record and broadcast the information that the person they bugged is interacting with, conversation-wise. And again, it really boils down to, if you will, social eavesdropping.
Let's get back to the questions here, my friend, because they're starting to pile up. Dominique is asking, please explain the bug. Most have an image of a bug as being mechanical or a microchip. Could it be organic, composed of cells, plasma, just undetectable?
Absolutely. And it is literally that I was referring to when I said they're bioengineered. They are biological constructs built from the host, from the person. What they do is they take some of the cells from the human that they've taken, modify them into a biological bug, a biological tracking device made up of that specific human DNA, which makes them virtually impossible to find. But because there's a slight difference, some of the more sensitive humans will spot them. But you still can't remove them any more than because with that particular type of bug, it infects the DNA structure. It doesn't damage it. It doesn't modify it per se, as in change the way the person is. But it will replicate itself. So if the primary gets pulled, the secondary that has been planted will activate. And as soon as it activates, it will set out a few extra cells of bugs, so that if one is removed or ends up being accidentally removed, for instance, let's say it's in your finger and you accidentally cut your finger off. Okay, nobody tried removing the bug, but it just went with the finger. Then one of the other bioengineered bugs activate, leaving the tracking system in place.
Corey is saying, I think I had an implant, but after a recent guest, a young lady who we now have on this show in a monthly feature, named Elizabeth April, came on the show, Corey's head hurt that night, but now she thinks it's gone. Could that be possible?
Absolutely. There are a couple of reasons why a bug will be removed. And it does happen where the person that put it in, or the people that put it in, deliberately go and remove it. And one of the reasons is the bug malfunctions. It's no longer working. A secondary possibility is the individual, for whatever reason, is no longer thinking or no longer functioning in a way that particular research is being benefited by the bug, so they remove it.
Makes sense. Those
are the two most common.
Go ahead.
Those are the two most common reasons why a bug would be removed.
Let's get over to Gail's question here. Keith, do you have any implants, and have you ever considered having them removed?
I don't tend to have them removed because my body is a little bit odd, in as much as I tend to dissolve them. It's quite literally, the way my system is actually built is not exactly, as near as we figured out, compatible. I did have a bug put in behind my left ear at one point, about 10 years ago now. And it has since, I guess the best way to put it is I disassembled it. It is possible if you understand the method that the human genome, that the biological construct operates. it is possible to turn your body into a, shall we say, bug-resistant system where the body will actually, much like it will attack a disease, you can actually get your own body to destroy a bug. But of course, the first trick there, you got to believe it's possible. You know, and most people really don't get that.
Let's move on to another question here. Or let's go to Corey's again. She's saying, so is it possible that hers just left or may have been moved? Because she doesn't even believe it's there.
And quite possible. Quite possible. Either one of those could happen. You know, because and like I said, it could have been a case of it stopped working and therefore was either removed or ended up being removed. Of its own accord. But yeah, having it go away is absolutely it's not a, I wouldn't say it's a common phenomenon, but it's certainly not unheard of.
All right, let's get to more questions here. This one coming from Chris. Keith, have you heard about what Stephen Hawking said about the human race, that we need to leave this planet within 100 years or we will go extinct? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, people are not going to like me, but he's an idiot. Don't get me wrong, I know that Stephen Hawking is purportedly one of the most brilliant men on the planet. But frankly, that's called fear-mongering. Everything I've picked up, mankind can turn the mess on this planet around if mankind gets off the tail and does it. You don't have to abandon a planet that is in absolutely beautiful shape and has a few scars on it. You know, that would be kind of like, you know, you're a close friend of yours or your house. You break a window on your house and the house down. It doesn't add up. Besides that, 100 years from now, this society is still set to be here. Okay, I have not seen any indication that this planet is going to be uninhabitable in 100 years if people start actually doing what they should be doing. Now, of course, if some genius does decide that they're going to light off a nuclear bomb and the ETs let them, that could make life here pretty miserable. But, frankly, I'm not known for being subtle, as you well know, Dave, but a comment like that from a mind purportedly that well-developed is absolutely, well, irresponsible on his part.
But don't forget, he also doesn't believe that we have been visited at any time. He does believe that there is probably life in other universes, but he's never seen a UFO, does not believe any of the reports that have happened, doesn't believe anything that what he has studied hasn't told him.
Well, that's kind of funny in one sense, because another report that I heard about him was that he said that all aliens were evil and should be eradicated when you see them. So if it is in fact the case, if he doesn't believe they have been here, what would prompt him to make that comment?
No idea. I find it confusing. I find him very confusing.
Understandable. And yeah, some people, I am sure, will take a look at the fact that I just said that Stephen Hawking was being an idiot with that kind of a comment, are certainly going to look at me and go, well, you're being awfully egotistical. Yeah, probably. You know? But then I never...
But he's not the only one. There are a lot of smart scientists out there who are doing great work who just cannot comprehend the fact that we have been visited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, there are phenomenal medical breakthroughs. And yet, when I was a kid, and I'll just go back to the triple helix. When I was a kid, I was telling the doctors they needed to look at the triple helix, and across the board, they told me I was out of my mind. It didn't exist. Now, of course, they're studying it, which isn't bad for something that doesn't exist.
Not gonna lie, right now I'm a little nerved up. My Edmonton Oilers blew a 3-goal third period lead. 3-goal third period lead. Who does that?
What they do, get off the ice and just say here?
I don't know. They may have. They may have. I needed to get a score update. It'd be damned. Yeah. Up 3-0 going into the third. They're tied 3-3 going to overtime now. Oh my gosh. Nerve-wracking, my friend. Nerve-wracking.
This is where I get off really lucky. Because I figure the game will end with somebody winning.
Well, this is true. This is true. You're not your ordinary Canadian, my friend. You're not your ordinary Canadian. Oh, my stress level has gone up right now. Stress level has gone up.
Just on that note, I did, on the note of the whole hockey thing in Canada, I was sitting with one individual and they were screaming at the TV. And of course, I made the cardinal mistake, right? And this lady was screaming at the TV at this one hockey game. And I looked at her and I went, tell me, does that really help? I'll tell you, that is the wrong question to ask.
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't do that. I know my wife, God bless her, she's an awesome, awesome woman. But she used to be in the habit of coming to talk to me right in front of the television. And I'd be watching the game. And I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why? I thought we loved each other. And you do this. Hurts my feelings.
You wanted your attention.
Yeah, exactly. Well, wrong time. That's what intermission is for. Shar is saying, Stephen Hawking said we shouldn't send out signals to space because we will attract the wrong aliens.
Yeah, well, we'll attract the right ones, too. Thank God the right ones got here first.
True enough.
That's kind of like saying you shouldn't... that is the same philosophy that is being propagated on almost a global level. You shouldn't talk to strangers. Well, when you really boil it down, your own kid, when it's born, is a stranger to you, and they're a stranger and you're a stranger to them. But if you don't talk to strangers, you are not going to meet anybody. If you don't send a signal out and say, hey, I'm here, how are you possibly going to meet the people that are out there? I'd recommend not shooting at them when you first see them. It's usually a bad way of saying hello. But talk about a fear base.
The fear base right now is wondering if my Oilers will blow another one in overtime. That's the fear base right now, my friend.
So what you do is you think in terms of, yeah, they probably will, and then when they win, you can go, yeah, they didn't. I
hate playoff overtime. Playoff overtime is just so painful. Painful. I once sat through, and I will say this, when I put my sports reporter's hat back on, it was Vancouver Canucks Dallas Stars. And my buddies and I had all planned on going to the bar after the game and having a good night with a beer. And it was the longest hockey game I ever sat through. It started at 7 o'clock. It ended at 1 in the morning. Four overtime periods. One of the longest games in NHL history. And I sat through that entire thing. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Terrible.
I'm guessing you didn't get to the bar.
No. By the time I got my work done, the bar was closed. Terrible night. Canucks won.
Now, of course, you've just opened the door that we have to get sidetracked, and I just got to ask, did your team win?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I will say this, and I know I've taken this way off topic, but I will say this. hockey players are some of the best athletes in the world. And what a lot of people don't know is when you get into a game that long, the players have lost so much body fat that in between the periods, they are actually lined up in the dressing room with intravenous hooked into their arms to rehydrate them just so they don't collapse on the ice for the next period. It is the most amazing thing how they do that. And then after the game, it's like, those poor guys, man. I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Well, I would. I'm not going to lie. I would. But either way. Overtime. Hate overtime. Okay, let's get back to some aliens, because I'm in hockey mode now. I just switch hats just so quickly, Keith. And I know you're not a hockey fan, and I apologize. I am.
In fairness, I don't have anything against hockey. I know it's something that everybody likes. One of the biggest, almost, you got to understand, for the people that are wondering how a Canadian cannot be a hockey fan, quite frankly, it boiled down to this. Being epileptic when I was a kid, I didn't have the coordination or the conscious ability to get into sports. By the time I hit grade 8, I destroyed my leg to the point that I couldn't play any of the sports. So therefore, I never developed that side. And of course, even being short-sighted to the extreme level, even getting into such simple sports as darts or pool or bowling, for that matter, I couldn't get into any of it. So that competitive side went right out the window. It never had a chance to develop. Although I do see the social importance of it.
Yes, me too. Me too. And I just hope that this time it's a better ending than 2 nights ago.
And let's face it, it's a good reason to get a beer.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's a silly question. What do aliens think of our sporting activities?
Many of them, you get kind of a mixed bag, okay? When you take a look at the Swazians, for instance, they figure you're way too tame, way too mild. Like, there is just, the games you play are, well, they're played by kindergartners, if that, right? When you take a look at the Greys, they really don't get them. It's like, what the heck are you chasing a puck around a frozen field for? For pity's sakes. And of course, when you start looking at, like, some of the humanoid races, they really do understand, and they do, like, for instance, the Nords, they all of the sports by any stretch, but they certainly understand the idea of competition. Okay. One of the classic side of it, they have the Nords actually like watching things like the strongman, the caber tossing, that sort of thing. They're not that much into things like watching golf. Just for some reason they don't see that as being much of a sport per se. But many of the human-based races, like your Mobians, for instance, understand it all too well. They've got different sports, but the same general idea. And I know for an absolute certainty, the Galactic Consortium, they have on their ships, they actually have sports arenas that are along the same lines. The biggest difference between their sports and human sports are they play theirs in 0G.
Wonder what the penalty is for fighting. Do they get 5 minutes in the penalty box to feel shame?
Are we talking about the Mobians or Swazians?
Either or. Either or.
Well, the Swazians, if it's not violent, then you weren't playing the game right, and you shouldn't be on the field in the first place. if somebody doesn't get bit in the middle of a football match, what amounts to football, then you were not playing the game properly. You weren't aggressive enough.
I got to go ahead.
When you look at the Mobians, when you look at the Arcturons, yes, they've got that sort of a lopsided, if you will, penalty box that encourages team play over individual, shall we say, brutality.
And last year playing competitive hockey, and I'm not saying this to brag, but just throwing a little Dave stat in there. My last year of competitive hockey, our season was 33 games long. I finished with 233 minutes in penalties. That's average of 7 minutes a game in the penalty box. I got to know them well. Average of 7 minutes a game. I worked hard for that, man. You know how many times you have to cross-check someone or spear them or butt end them or fight them in order to get that type of penalty minutes? Never did reach 250. That was my goal.
See, and being, quite frankly, a definitive pacifist with an extreme side, one of the things that I never did like about hockey was there was an old saying when I was a kid that really went, quite frankly, I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out.
Yeah, we don't like that.
Well, being an empath, I could feel the fights. Not what we call enjoyable.
See, and I'll look at that in the opposite. I look at that in the opposite. I see someone get smoked in the cheek with a punch, and I'm like, yeah, I miss that.
Yeah. Just be grateful you're not fully empathic.
No, I just like it. Oh, yes, the good old days.
But,
the good old days.
The thing is, even off-worlders have their pastimes. They've got them. When you take some of these races, yes, they're geared for war or exploration. But
Keith,
what the heck?
I don't know what's going on with your Skype there, but we are in slow motion right now, my friend. Can you hear me okay? I wonder if Keith...
I can now. But
okay.
You were breaking up something fierce.
Oh, you were breaking up something fierce. It's your fault.
Probably. I've tried the bank's computer system. I'm shocked to find it being mine.
Yeah, Skype can be Skype sometimes, and I think we're having a Skype moment right now.
But they have their ways of relaxing as well, and they are, by and large, scientists. I mean, they do have support people, that deal with such things as feeding them and, as putting in prepping food, just like every society has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you've got people from every walk of life going that direction.
Mm-hmm. I get that. In the next hour, we're going to talk more about spaceships, how people can tell the difference about what they're seeing in the sky. And it's been almost 2 years since we actually talked about that. And that's going to be an interesting second hour. But as we continue with implants and the relationships between extraterrestrials and people, Keith, there's a lot of people who want to have contact and do. There's people who want to have contact that don't. And we have mentioned many times when you're on the air, be careful what you wish for. If people want to have that positive contact, what are the steps you would put out there for anybody to try and figure out what's going on?
Well, first and foremost, is quite literally, and this seems way too simple, but we got to go there. Start treating the people around you in a positive fashion. You want to draw positive reaction, positive awareness from the off-worlders. Start making a positive impact in your neighborhood. And do understand, this does not mean you have to become politically active or you've got to do something huge. It means quite literally, you walk out the door, you see a neighbor, say hi. Start that social vibration, because they will track it, the off-worlders will track that shift back to where it's starting. That's one of the advantages of the higher technologies they use. The other thing is, stay focused quite literally on the concept that you're looking for positive confirmation in a you are able to handle it. Okay, because if you don't, their idea of positive interaction may not be yours. Like, you really don't want to get a hold of a vegan and try and get them to figure out what you consider a positive feeling, because they don't have any sense of pain. Like, it's not part of their makeup. So when they go to do an operation on somebody that's been hurt, frankly, they use no anesthetic. They don't understand what anesthetic is. Because if you don't feel pain, you don't need the anesthetic. Right. But if you stay focused on that side of it, and especially depending on where your focus really is, the more aware you are of your environment, the more you take into consideration what you're dealing with, the more likely you are to draw their attention. Now, by no means does this make it a fail-safe. It does not mean if you all of a sudden start paying positive attention to everything around you, that, yeah, you're guaranteed to have somebody come and get you. That's not the way this works. Okay. It really boils down to sending out the right thought line and the right physical activity that promotes positive interaction. Okay. The idea that somebody came up with of sitting out in your backyard and flashing a light, it has been known to work. It's not one I personally have the patience to go out and do. And I often wonder how people came up with the idea that if you take a flashlight, somebody from orbit is going to see it. Or somebody, if you take a good flashlight, that somebody at 10,000 feet flying over is going to notice your flashlight. Is it possible? Certainly. But let's face it, the odds are not in your favor. The other thing, of course, is when you're on and this one works a lot better than many might think. When you're talking to people on the radio, when you're talking to people on the telephone, anything, or even when you're texting. Much as I have long said that the government is watching everything that's going on, so are the off-worlders. And they do watch the communication lines on all levels that they can find, and do a lot of their tracking, if you will, by that way as well. But those are a couple of things that you can do to encourage a positive interaction instead of, shall we say, a negative one. Make sense?
If someone or something is watching you, will they see the flashlight? This comes from Corey.
Well, the answer to that is if they happen to be watching you at that time, the answer is clearly yes. Because if they've already targeted you, then the flashlight would, quite frankly, let them know that you're looking for them. And then, of course, if it happens to be a positive side, the odds go up, obviously, that you're going to get picked up. Well, obvious to me. If they happen to be negative people, you may end up having the other side of it happen where they back up a whole long way.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of people who use laser pointers up in the sky to try and get interaction?
Well, it's kind of like using a screen door on a submarine to keep the water out. You're talking about firing something that is so tiny that the odds of the off-worlders paying any attention to it are slim to non-existent. Okay. Now, from that standpoint, if it works for people, if that's the way they want to do it, they're more than welcome. But from everything I've seen, that doesn't work all that well. Now, on the other hand, you use an aircraft spotlight, an airport spotlight, you're likely to get their attention a little easier. Of course, most people don't have access to airport searchlights.
When people are looking to the sky and they think they see something, we're going to get more into this right after the break, which is in about 5.5 minutes. There is always so much confusion about what's going on. Just because they see a UFO doesn't mean that they are going to have alien interaction, does it, Keith?
Not even remotely. Well, I guess remote enough. But no, absolutely not. The fact that they see a UFO does not mean it's coming to pick them up. It also doesn't mean that it's going to come and abduct them. All it means is you saw a UFO. And something I do want to clear up here, let's be clear. UFO is an unidentified flying object. If you don't know what it is, it's a UFO. That does not mean that it is an extraterrestrial. That's where a lot of people seem to get things a little sideways.
But there's also a lot of people out there who will say that what they are seeing is much different than something they have ever seen before. And if they are seeing that, maybe even on a frequent basis, why wouldn't they be having contact?
Well, because we have roughly about 7.5 billion people on the planet right now, of which about, as near as I understand, about 2 billion of them are trying to figure out how to make contact. And there are not that many off-worlders that are trying to do the abductions. Okay. Like, we're not talking billions of off-worlders around this planet. So, it's very much a question of logistics in this case. With everybody, everybody can have their hand up wanting attention. Not everybody's going to get it. Matter of fact, it's going to be a very small percentage that'll get picked up. And oftentimes, it's the people that aren't expecting to be picked up that get picked up first. Because they're the ones that don't have an ulterior motive for being picked up in the first place, making the scientific research far more useful.
Do you find then that people, just because they see a UFO, automatically try and put two and two together? That they are abductees or contactees?
Many people make that mistake, yes. They saw a UFO, therefore they must have been abducted. And that is by no means the case. Okay, but many people do go that route. Where they think because they're not a common thing, if I'm seeing them, it must have been an abduction. All that means is you were witness to them. Many times people that see them, you see, if all it is a case of you saw them, then odds are that's all it was. The people that have the most likely, that are the most probable to have been abducted, are the ones that see them and there is an uncontrolled emotional response to seeing them. That will tell you there's been an issue. Okay, like if you see a UFO, and frankly, in this case, it happened to me. I saw a UFO when I was a lot younger, and my immediate reaction was panic. Well, as it turned out, decades later, when we pieced it all together, that particular event was the same event that ended up resulting in me breaking my arm, me having my arm broken. Okay. So I mean, that was when I ran into the ant folk. And that's one race that I don't like. Yeah, I'm not impressed with their attitude at all. But then I've yet to have a real decent interaction with them.
Corey is saying, and we only got about 15 seconds here. Corey is saying, do you mean getting excited to see a UFO?
No, not. It's beyond excited. It's either really agitated or an extreme level of excitement. And it's very rare that people actually get that real extreme level. It's not like, oh, that was exciting. It goes beyond that. And I just don't know the words in 5 seconds to actually tell you.
I get that. I put you on a tight timeline there, my friend. It's overtime. That's all I got to say. 11 minutes left in overtime. Damn it, we need a goal. Damn it, we need a goal. Come on, Edmonton. Let's get this thing sewed up. And on that note, my friend, we are going to stop out for our final break of the night. Our Keith Andrews is our guest. He is here the first Friday of every month with the ET Connection. That's what we love about him, talking everything alien. Doesn't matter what it is, Keith will talk about it. We're going to get into some UFO talk. How do we tell what's a UFO? How do we tell what's not? What do the different lights mean? What do the different shapes and sizes mean? We're going to get all into it next hour with our Keith Andrews on Spaced Out Radio right after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit. And expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride on this Friday night, May 5th, May 6th. If you're on the East Coast or across the pond, hope you're enjoying your day, evening, night so far. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Uncle Jimbo, James Tyson, and Elizabeth Anglin are back in the cabin for Spaced Out Weekend, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com, because we do this thing 7 days a week for your listening entertainment. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can tune us in on TuneIn, download this show and others on iTunes. We're on TalkStream Live, Player FM, Stitcher. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. While on our website, read up on the Encounter Online, our great news section that we have building, and go to patreon.com. For as low as $1 a month, you could become a patron of Spaced Out Radios as well. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We are also live in Noonan, Georgia on WQEE 99 Rock the Key. We're live in Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio. We're live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Brephophageist. Brephophageist is your password. Brephophageist. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it scores well in Scrabble. Bill sets a password each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. Our Keith Andrews is back with the ET Connection. It happens the first Friday of every single month. Keith, welcome back. 2 hours down, 1 to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just flown by today, but thank you so much for having me back. And again, thank you so much for all the returning listeners and any new ones that have snuck in while we were on break.
Absolutely. They're always rotating. Always rotating. We've just been joined by another in the chat room. Loretta is back. Welcome back, Loretta. Good to have you with us. Keith, right before the break, we were talking about a lot of experiences people have, how they can figure out whether or not they are having contact. And the subject of UFOs always comes up. And yes, we talk a lot on this show with you about the ET contact, because that is very, very important for us to do. And that's mainly what it's all about. But the aliens got to get here somehow. And that's where, when I look at it, we have the UFOs. Now, UFO, as you state, and as everybody knows, is a pseudonym standing for unidentified flying object, which means we don't know if it's human, we don't know if it's extraterrestrial. It's one of the two, we can confirm that. When people are staring up at the sky, whether it's daytime or night, mostly night because that's when people have most of their experiences, how can they tell, in your opinion, whether or not they are looking at a human craft or an extraterrestrial craft?
Well, one of the easiest ones, and I can't tell you whether they run north-south or run east-west, but when you're watching a point of light that is going in a straight line, whether it goes north, south, east, west, I don't know. Okay. If it all of a sudden doubles back on itself or makes a 90-degree turn and just scoots off in a different direction, it's a UFO. Satellites travel in a very static, very straight line. They're designed to do that. Anything that belies that trajectory is a UFO. Okay. Now, I'm not an aviation expert by any means, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dave, but planes on the whole use a red and white flash, like on the wingtips.
And green, yes.
And green, okay.
Blue.
So if you see,
pardon me, it's blue, but it looks green.
Okay. So if you see something that is a different color, or like planes, from my understanding, only have two lights that they use, like two colors. It'll vary on occasion as to which two, but if you're watching something that is multiple colors, that's not a plane. Okay, it's a UFO. If you are watching something that all of a sudden, expands at a staggering level, like a normal thing in the sky will stay at that distance. Okay, but when you get a light that all of a sudden comes flying in, and even if it doesn't come right up to you, but gets noticeably bigger, and then all of a sudden gets really tiny and vanishes, this is not a plane. Okay, planes don't behave that way. Now, of course, you do have to take into consideration such things as, are you looking through leaves? Are you looking through branches? But on the whole, especially with the high altitude, and the reason you see them more at night is, well, let's face it, look up in the sky and see how easy it is to see a satellite during daylight. But if you're watching the lights and the stars in the sky, watch their behavior. And, again, if you're, one of the other things that will show up is even in a meteor shower. In a meteor shower, all of the lights go in one direction. Okay, so if you've got an extra light that's going sideways to the meteor shower, or worse, going against it, it's not part of the meteor shower, it's a ship. It really boils down to an issue of logic regarding the way that things move. Not the aerodynamics of it, because the off-worlders use a very different type of calculation for aerodynamics, because they can modify what they're doing. But those are a couple of the ways.
Shar is asking, Keith, how can you tell, or how can they tell you see them from so high? Do they read your mind?
Only some of them. Bear in mind, mankind has telescopes attached to satellites that can tell the color of somebody's bikini. So for the off-worlders to spot somebody that is watching, it's really not that hard of a deal. It literally can boil down to something as simple as high-resolution graphics. There actually are not, statistically, as many telepathic races as what people think. Okay. And besides that, where it comes to the level of telepathy that would be required to spot an individual from orbit is almost unheard of, even amongst the off-worlders. Okay, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Coral's question here. She is asking, is it best to use night vision binoculars to watch for UFOs?
Night vision will reveal some of them, but I don't know if I would say it's best to, primarily because it depends on what the UFO is that you're looking at. UFOs that use light-bending technology to create, if you will, invisibility, night vision won't help with. But a radio telescope will have, like a radio, something that works essentially on echolocation, will work quite nicely to spot a so-called invisible vehicle. Okay, thermographic will spot some of them because of if you're dealing with in atmosphere, a thermographic sensor will spot some ships because of the exhaust. Same as something that measures relative magnetic pulse. So, I mean, it depends on what type of ship you're looking at, if you will, as to which one is the most effective to find it.
What kind of patterns in the sky should people look for? Should they look for orbs in the sky flying together? Should they look for or follow satellite paths? What do you think?
Well, satellite paths are a good way to watch because it gives you something solid to know if you're spotting a UFO. Very easy to tell if it's a satellite. If it follows a dead straight line and no variation on speed, you're probably looking at a satellite. If it is shifting gears on a 90-degree turn or doubles back on itself, that's not a satellite. When you're looking at the lights in the sky, watch for figure 8 scanning patterns. In other words, a light that is not following in a normal pattern. Figure 8 is, it's got to deliberately change direction. Okay, now answer to the people that go, well, is it possible that there'd be something out there that does react in that fashion? Well, the answer is yes. It is possible. But not necessarily, not exactly, shall we say, effectively common enough.
Everett is asking, why do UFOs use navigation lights at all? Aren't they advanced enough to not need them?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. One of the primary reasons, of course, if you're trying to research an evolving species, leaving lights on so that the species has the opportunity to spot you and potentially trigger the species' curiosity side is part of some species experiment. Okay, so don't forget, the other issue is all of the technologies that the different races are using are not necessarily too far ahead of mankind's, aside from propulsion systems and the sealing side of stuff, if you will. Okay, sealing as in hull integrity to handle zero G and handle no atmosphere sort of setup.
That makes sense, though. But why use the lights so close to ground?
Well, because if you're dealing with a race that, like, for instance, the Greys, okay, the Greys cannot see as well as people would like them to, or would not like them to, I'm not sure which. So they use the lights to, what humans do, turn the flashlight on so you can see what you're looking at. The fact that they travel, thousands or years to get here does not mean that they are so evolved beyond human configuration that, it doesn't, just because they've come from that far doesn't mean that they are physiologically more advanced. It just means they've had longer to build their toys.
But some of them put up some pretty incredible light shows. I know when I had my close encounter of the third kind, the light show that it put on was phenomenal. I would love to see that again. Other people have had everything from luminescence to neon to whatever else. White, green, blue, purple, pink. Whatever the color may be. I'm sure you could even throw a little puce in there. But
what the heck is
It's a color. It's a color. Crayola makes a crayon of puce.
Okay. I'll take your word for that.
But do they use the lights as maybe part of a communication as well?
Absolutely. When you're dealing with strobing light, in other words, oscillating oscillating optics, you're definitively looking at another form of communication. Sometimes it's air to ground. In other words, they've got landing points on the planet, and sometimes that's the easiest way to signal, especially if they're in a military area where they don't want the people picking up on the location on ground. Okay, that's one of the... Oh, well, thank you very much, Robert. Robert White in SOR put up a square that shows what puce is. This is a nice thing about interactive radio, Dave. Yeah.
Let's get to some questions from the audience here. Bill is asking, Keith, if it was you in front of a congressional committee, just like Ellie Arroway was in contact, how would you answer the question, do you have any physical proof of your interactions with aliens?
Yeah, and they wouldn't like my answer. Talk to the military. The answer is, no, I don't. But the military certainly does. And one of the dead giveaways of the military having it, never mind my own belief and other things I've been told, is the fact that the CIA, which doesn't have any authority in Canada, showed up on my doorstep looking for information about what I knew about the alien agenda. So, talk to them. They obviously have more information or more proof, if you will, than what I do. Which would make for a very short interview, I realize that. Because then they'll turn around and go, well, how do you know the military's got it? Well, you get to piece that one together. Unfortunately, that is one of the... People have asked why I haven't published a whole pile. And in all fairness, the reality is that the information I've got, I don't have for. All I've got is corroborating evidence where I've said things were in existence that I couldn't have possibly known, and people have gone and found them. They've shown up or they've come out and proven it down the road. So I'm dealing with a staggering amount of circumstantial evidence. But do I have any actual physical proof? The answer is not that I've got access to.
So many people though are yearning for that proof. They want that cold, hard, concrete proof that this is happening. They're tired of hearing the experience, Keith, whether it's from people like you or people like me or other people around them. And at some point, people get fed up with that. And you can't blame them, for not getting fed up. But when do we have to finally start taking people for their word for what they are seeing in the sky?
Well, I was talking actually to one individual, and I asked them that exact question. What do I do with this? I've got all this physical, all this evidence, all these memories, all this circumstantial stuff of other people identifying things about me or about things I've seen, but I've got nothing physical. And the individual I was talking to looked at me, and they were very much focused on the logic side. And like I told the individual, I said, I don't need you to believe what I'm telling you. All I need is a logical understanding of what to do with this based on the information I give you. And they went, okay, let me have it. When I got finished laying it out with all of the stuff, and bear in mind, this was a 3-hour conversation and then some, the individual looked at me and goes, okay, what you're talking about, you will not get physical proof. It's not possible. So they said, with that in mind, we look to the legal way of doing it. Look at circumstantial evidence. In a court of law, humans take a look at circumstantial evidence in lieu of physical proof. And he said, with that in mind, you have enough circumstantial evidence to convict somebody of murdering the victim that died 100 years before the accused was born. Okay, so you have to look at, people have to realize they're looking for proof of something they're not likely to comprehend in the first place. Okay, think of it this way. If the proof is a subdermal intercellular echo, if that's the physical proof that you're looking for, that exists, if you can't see that, you're not going to know it. And even if you did, the odds are you wouldn't recognize it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Let's get to another question, this one from Dawn. She is asking, Keith, what are the small silver orbs? She had some hanging out all day one day. Are they a drone or something else? They were reflective, but see-through at the same time.
Those belong to an interesting little race. They are literally a ship. Okay, but they are a very, obviously, small race that operates them. Orbs I've seen come in 3 different shapes, in 3 different configurations, but the silver ones are literally a ship. Okay, and rest assured, they still do light speed without any problem at all. But that's why they that's why they stand out from the other ones, is because they're not, they are a physical construct. And in answer to the other question, depending on the size, they're usually only 1 or 2 man.
Eric is asking, so is Einstein correct in that nothing with mass can exceed the speed of light?
No. However, that being said, you have to understand that Einstein, his original theory of relativity, is not what everybody has come to accept. Because his actual theory of relativity was not a mathematical calculation, it was a theory of relativity. So when he made the comment that nothing with mass could exceed the speed of light, first of all, he had limited calculation capacity to figure out the amount of mass you were dealing with, because the tools he was working with couldn't pick it up. He just didn't have the technology to measure what he knew. Second of all, he couldn't explain what he knew. He literally was so far ahead of the people around him in the way that his mind understood things that he could not put in words what humans would accept, what fathom. So in many cases, he rounded off. He would simply go, no, it just doesn't work that way. And he'd bypass trying to explain it. So, yeah, things with mass will travel faster than the speed of light, because the speed of light simply means you've got to outstretch the gravitational pull of the photon. And that you can do. Okay, and something with mass will exceed that speed. Given technology to back it up.
All right, let's get to another question. This one comes from Robert, all the way down in Australia. With the aliens having observed us for so long, have there been any recordings made of wars from the past, like Gettysburg, or human achievements like the Wright brothers flying their first plane?
Absolutely. This is all, from the off-worlder standpoint, this is all part of the research of societal evolution of the human genome. Okay, and they have recorded many of the major wars, many of the major discoveries, right? And even many of the minor discoveries have been recorded, because they're all part of, if you will, the evolutionary doctrine. If you're gauging how societies evolve on the whole, watching a fledgling society grow from the get-go requires documentation of those odds and ends. So yeah, absolutely. They've even recorded, and you'll love this one, much of the music that has gone out. And personally, there's a lot of it that's gone out that I've really wondered about how they came up calling music, aside from it with sounds changing orders. You know, but that's just personal opinion.
Eric Cooper is asking a question. We're never sure if it's Eric or his beard, because he has a great beard going on down there in Washington State. He says, I have seen a rise in abductions and sighting reports coming from a paranormal team perspective. Have you seen this as well in 2017 so far?
In my case, no, but what I have seen is a rise in the awareness of it. And that would be the fundamental difference. The one thing that has been documented, and not by me, because frankly I just don't go there, is that every time Mars gets closer, you know, it reaches its closest point to Earth, sightings go up by about three times. You know, and that's something that's been watched for decades. Which, you know, does kind of lend to the point of, yeah, Mars does have life on it. But they'll figure that out sooner or later. The thing is, it's very much like the issue of many of the events that people are now finding out about. More is being noticed, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's been a rise. Now, of course, one of the things that would increase the apparent numbers is the rise in the population. But your percentages are probably still sitting about the same size. You know, more people get taken. You know, that's where that sits.
Eric has a follow-up question. He's wondering if you have ever heard of an alien race called the Rogue.
Quite probably. You know, unfortunately, I may not have heard of it from the same name. You know, that said, you know, when we quite often that what we might be dealing with there, though, is a branch of a group. Like, for instance, Radio Command it's a small collective. It's not a race per se, so much as a department. Okay, and the Rogue may be along the same lines, but I really am not, by that name, I'm not familiar with it. Doesn't mean I don't know of them.
Getting back to the little bit of the topic of discussion for UFOs here. A lot of people will see black triangles, they'll see black boomerangs, they'll see cigar-shaped, they'll see hubcap-shaped UFOs, they'll see things in the sky that look like weather balloons, teardrops, all sorts of ships. Does each race have their own style of ship? Or could, say, 12 different races that come visit this planet use a black triangle? How does that work?
Well, theoretically, the answer would be, yeah, they could. But the reality of it is that when you're looking at, for instance, a cigar shape, there's two cigar shapes that I've seen that are distinctly, they belong to one race and one race only. There is one cigar shape that has no apparent windows at all. Those are Pleiadian. The race that has, or the cigar shape that has the windows in it, is the only people I've seen handling them are Swazian. When you're looking at the traditional saucer shape, those, on the whole, belong to the Greys. Okay. When you look at the black triangles, those I've seen operated by a few different races, but on the whole, they belong to the consortium. The thing with the black triangles, and by the way, the black triangles are often mistaken, or vice versa, for the boomerang. But that is the shape that mankind has also engineered. Okay, so sometimes you'll end up with that side of it being a terrestrial bound on those ones. When you're dealing with the pear shapes, now the pear shapes are kind of an odd ship. But frankly, the ones that usually operate them are, meaning they literally don't have a physical form. I mean, well, they don't have a static physical form. As the term I hope conveys, they literally operate like an amoeba. 160-pound amoeba, but they don't have a physical configuration to them that requires any sort of skeletal system.
Eric has a question here. Eric is asking, what race was it that had the elongated skulls that they have found in Peru?
Well, everybody calls them coneheads. But trying to remember the name. I hate when I do that. But that is, now it depends on which ones you're looking at. Okay, because there's two types down there. But those ones are, now I'm pulling a blank on the name. I know who they're talking about. Technologically, they were extremely advanced. And they come from out, where the heck is it? Right near the Pleiades. They're not Pleiadian, but they are very tightly tied to them. And I'm just going to have to rack my brain now, pull a blank on it. But understand, the ones that have an actual elongated skull are one thing. There are ones that they found where they've got a flat spot on the front of their skull, but it's an elongated skull. Those are human. And that was done by the natives. Okay. And presumably it was done in emulation. I'm not entirely certain of the entire purpose of it, but that was a very, very definitive issue. And no, they weren't, before somebody jumps there, no, the elongated skulls were not Atlantean. Atlantean were almost perfect as far as human appearance goes.
Back to the ships. Eric is wondering, do Anunnaki fly the Black Triangle?
No, Anunnaki actually fly around a large round ship. Like, and when I'm talking large, we are not talking, just a bit of a circle. We're looking at something that is quite often as much as 2 or 3 stories tall. And that's for the smaller scout ships. That's not for the big ones.
What about the whole theory that these black triangles are TR-3B aircraft, which are man-made for shuttling people around, maybe from here to Earth, here to the moon, pardon me, Earth to moon, Earth to Mars, or wherever.
That would be why I said that black triangles are the one ship that mankind also makes.
Would that be
the one?
Would that be reverse engineering on how we got it, or what, a trade?
Trade is more to the point. They started with reverse engineering, but over time they managed to get enough swapping back and forth, if you will. But the trade didn't happen until mankind had actually, on his own, figured out the starting points. Okay, because once mankind got into figuring out the starting points, and mankind still hasn't developed the propulsion system, because the propulsion system they use is an electron drive, which is kind of an entertaining thing. And remind me, given that I actually get up there, which I'm planning on, remind me to show you the schematics for an electron drive. No, I am not a scientist by trade, but yes, I do have the, if you will, layman's schematic already sorted out.
Damn it, my Edmonton Oilers just lost in overtime. Son of a gun.
I feel...
Son of a
now
gun.
Now you're just going to have a beer to complain.
Oh, don't even make me start, because I got beer right in my fridge beside me. Oh. Damn it.
Yeah. But since they lost, you have to drink the warm beer, not the cold stuff.
Oh, no. No. Not going there. I have a bottle of beer that was given to me right before I started Spaced Out Radio. And it's been sitting on my shelf for 2 years. Because it was a congratulations present from Johnny Enoch, who helped me start up this show. And I won't drink it. I also have a bottle right beside me of Night Train wine. Now, if you're a Guns N' Roses fan, you know that one of their songs on their first album was called Night Train, which is named after this very cheap mouthwash type wine. So, I do have beer, warm beer and warm wine sitting right in front of me. No, I'm not sharing.
Well, I wouldn't recommend you drink the beer after this long. Anyway, personally, the wine, that's up to you, but the beer's a really bad idea. I'm looking at this, and just there's a lady in Spreaker, Coral Ann, has asked, this is my first night listening to you, so maybe you've answered this already. Would your contacts warn you if they know about an upcoming problem for Earth, like the Carrington event? Now, the answer to the question there, Carol, would be yes. Where it comes to the Carrington event, to be frank, I haven't heard of it. But that doesn't mean I'm not entirely familiar with what's going on with it. But I already know of a couple of upcoming events that mankind can stop. One of them I actually know how to stop without a problem. Only the people that can do anything with it, I have mentioned I don't know how many times about on this show alone about the Canary Islands problem, and I have yet to hear from anybody about solving the problem, because solving it is child's play. But if it goes off the way it is set to go off, simply put, we're looking at 2 billion dead. Rough guesstimation. So yeah, I get told about them. And, in all fairness, yes, I've answered the question before, but let's face it, not tonight. So no problem there. This is what we get for, well, you know that, Dave.
All too well. Trip has a question here. He is asking, is SETI just a joke, or have they actually found a signal yet?
SETI had found a signal decades ago, only they're now starting to leak out the information that they've actually started to find signals. But no, is SETI a joke? No, they just happen to be, shall we say, muzzled a lot of the time.
Who do you think muzzles them?
Oh, whoever the governing body is that's around them. You know, that's the unfortunate part, is the people that are supposed to, supposed to be guiding society seem to be completely overlooking the fact that we are not alone. You know, this whole idea of disclosure, SETI figured it out ages back and just have been... Now, part of it I understand. Okay, I certainly understand why, the off-worlders don't walk around in broad daylight. It's a good way to get shot by humans. But SETI isn't a joke. They just happen to not have... There are complications around trying to tell everybody what they're really getting.
So how do people like our audience here, or people listening in who are listening live on the radio station, or maybe they'll pick up the podcast tomorrow, how do they fully grasp or comprehend who they can get information from? Because all of those who are said to be reputable are saying we haven't found anything yet, or we have found something or some sort of anomaly but can't prove it is alien. And yet there are people out there who say, we know, we got it, been there, done that. How can the regular person tell who is working for the truth and who is working for the cover-up?
Well, that's a really good question, and it's one I've played an awful lot around with. First and foremost, you have to use logic to start with. Okay, and the logic side of it is this. With the number of sightings, okay, let's just look at statistics for a second. With the number of sightings, if even only 0.5% are truly unexplained, frankly, that's a staggering number of sightings. So when you're talking to somebody that is categorically going, no, nothing exists out there, we haven't found anything, you really have to ask yourself if that makes any functional sense. Okay. It really, you have to learn to trust your instincts on it and look at what they're telling you. If you go back to the same person and they're giving you different answers, okay, that just don't add together, they're covering something up. It's a pretty basic way of figuring it out. But is there, when you look at the government, for instance, and everybody says, well, why don't they tell us what's really going on? Well, if the government actually told you what all they were actually up to, you'd have a civil war. In any country. Much more importantly, people on the whole are afraid of so much that they're looking for things to be wrong. So when you're talking to somebody about what's been discovered or what is going on, what the truth behind it is, you have to look at the logic side of it. Okay, so is there an easy answer to say, oh, this person's being honest with you, this one isn't? The answer is no. The only people I know of that can spot pretty solidly on first word whether somebody's being straightforward are full-blown empaths that can feel whether there's truth behind what's being said. Now, the thing to be cautious there is truth boils down to, does the person saying it believe it? Okay. if they believe what they're telling you, it's going to come across as proof. So, is there a way that you can unequivocally say, yes, that's the right one? The answer is no. But trust your instincts when you're talking to somebody and look for them doubling back on themselves. Okay, prime example, and I'll just use Stephen Hawking because, well, I've been talking to people about him for decades. Since day one, I have held that the man has a staggeringly evolved mind, but where it comes to off-world interactions, an idiot. Okay, and I won't change that. I don't care who I'm talking to. That is pretty much the way I've termed it all along. Okay. When you're talking to other people, doesn't matter what walk of life they come from. Some people in the government are deadly honest, and they will be very straightforward. They may tell you, I can't answer that question, which really boils down to they've got a gag order from above them. But at least they'll be honest about it. And let's face it, there are some politicians that when you talk to them are honest. Unfortunately, it's the real negative ones that tend to stand out. And it goes the same way with common people. So it really boils down to sort of, if you will, trying. Eric, the answer is no. Eric Cooper has a question. Is Trump a reptilian hybrid? No. He's doing that all as a human. The whole thing of the hybrid of the reptilian hybrids being the ones trying to take over the planet or trying to destroy it comes from the 1970s. Fabulous movie, but really bad for the whole UFO industry. But when it comes to trying to sort out, who to talk to the people around you, talk to so-called government officials, but quite literally, and this is just frankly in my eyes, personal opinion, I guess is the best way to put it. But if somebody tells you there are no races out there that are, there's nothing beyond human, ignore them. Okay, because quite frankly, that's got to be about as short-sighted as you can get in my eyes. Okay, overall, that's what you're looking at. Does that make sense?
Sure it does. We only got about 5.5 minutes left with you tonight, my friend. Wow. Another one blowing right by. Good friend of Dennis's, who's a frequent flyer of this show. However, he was watching the Oilers game live in Edmonton. His friend Megger, is asking, Keith, do you have the ability to tell who among us is alien?
The answer is I can spot them most of the time. But if you're asking me, am I going, when I went out to Portland, Maine, I was the first one that identified the hybrid as a hybrid. Okay. I will spot it. I do tend to spot them, yes. It doesn't matter which race it is. Am I going to, if you're asking me, will I go and point out who is alien and who is not? If I meet somebody, I will certainly tell them if they ask. But if John asks me, hey, is Betty a hybrid? Frankly, most of the time I won't say a word, but like Eric has said, he was just messing with me regarding the reptilian hybrid and Trump. But will I derail something like that? Certainly. But individuals, I'm not about to point out to anybody. Okay. Because quite frankly, they've got enough problems without having that added. But do I see them? Do I know who they are? When I meet them, the answer is yes. And to be honest, there's not actually as many as people keep thinking there are.
Do a lot of hybrids on this planet know they are hybrids?
No. In all fairness, there are a very, very few of them that do. Linda Moulton Howe made the comment on a radio show one day that they all know they're hybrids, and I'll tell you, that was a bald-faced lie. Absolutely flat out stupid. The sad part with that was she had actually asked me that question. I told her then, no, they don't. Very few of them actually know they're hybrid. The closest they come in, on the whole, is knowing they don't see the world the way other people do, and they don't necessarily understand it properly. You know, but very few actually know they're actually a hybrid.
How could they not know?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you know your genetic history?
Not outside of North America, no.
Okay, that's how they don't know. Most people don't even know it 3 generations back. Very few people, for instance, know they've got native blood. Never mind African blood. And a hybrid, if you're born hybrid, you won't know the difference. You know, that's works.
So with these hybrids that are out there, Keith, what species are they coming from?
Well, how about if we go, what species aren't they coming from? You see, you've got fairy folk. There are you've got half-breed fairy folk. You've got half-breed shadow walkers. You've got half-breed hybrids, or half-breed Pleiadian, half-breed greys. You know, you even have some half-breed reptilians. You know, amongst multiple others. I mean, there are some races that just do not handle hybridization at all. You know, like, for instance, the amoeboid are not compatible with the human genome. You'll never find a half water elemental. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, the mix is quite extensive, but there are some races that are just not genetically capable.
So let's say somebody is a hybrid with a malevolent species. Would they take on that malevolency as well?
Only sometimes. Every human that's born has potential for negative and positive. Even malevolent species. There are some decent ones in them. Okay. Like Tormenon, you'd think were malevolent from the get-go. They're mercenaries. Right? But I've met some that are phenomenal people. And yeah, they're certainly mercenaries. They do everything for money. But that doesn't mean they're evil or that they'll, hurt anybody, everybody. Techlex are the same way. When you take a look at shadow walkers are, there is shadow walkers, for those that don't know what that is, by human standard definition, simply put, they're vampires. But let's not get carried away. Hollywood did a number on those people. Kind of like they did on the reptilians. But just because their other half, if you will, the genetic hybridization process, just because it came from a negative, it's the interaction on the genetic level that will determine, and the upbringing, that will determine whether you're dealing with an evil individual, as it will, or a positive individual. You can take the best genetics and beat it to a pulp day in and day out, and it will become a pretty violent individual.
True enough, my friend. Guess what? It's not time for us to wrap things up for the month with you, Mr. Andrews.
It has been a ride. An awful fast one.
It has. Way too fast. But, Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on here for a minute. I got to wrap this thing up because I got to get out of the cabin for the weekend. Space Out Radio thanks our Keith Andrews, who comes in here the first Friday of every month with the ET Connection. If you're listening in on the terrestrial radio side, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL cranking out. Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. He rocks us in and takes us home every single night on this program, and we love that he does that. Check out his website, bumblefoot.com. If you want more information, or just go to spacedoutradio.com where you can click on the Bumblefoot page as well. Tomorrow night and Sunday, Elizabeth Anglin and James Tyson are back with Spaced Out Weekend. It's going to be a great weekend of entertainment because we do this thing every single night of the week. We don't give up. We don't quit. We don't skip shows. We are always here because that's what we love to do. I want to say thank you to our guests all week long. It's been absolutely great for everybody in the chat rooms, everybody taking part on Twitter, spreading the word of this show. And you know what, my friends? This is how we are going to own the night. And we can do that right here on the Mighty SOR. Thank you once again for everyone checking us out, spreading the word. It's always good. I want to say thank you to some people from Spaced Out Radio. Everett and Eric from The Encounter Online. Jolene, who does our web design. Catherine James on social media. Bob Davis with the killer beard and our intro voice. Kim Gandy, our business manager, and Thomas McGowan on sales. That's your Spaced Out Radio team. Mr. Bumblefoot's also on that team. Take us home, my friend. We own the night. Good night.